We turn to you now to make a new start. More than just tears, we give you our hearts. Let the people cry and call, that we might stand and not fall. Save us now. Refreshing breeze, people set free. What a wondrous thing that would be. Let us be glad and rejoice. Open our ears to hear your voice. Save us now. You will cause wonders in the sky. You will be awesome, bring new life. You will cause wonders in the sky. You will be awesome, bring new life. You will cause wonders in the sky. You will be awesome, bring new life. The Lord will give back what we have lost, free of charge, without any cost. Help us now to run the race, never again to live in disgrace. Save us now. Save us now.
Hello, everybody. So glad we could be together today. I hope you're having a good day. I haven't been outside. I've been down in the studio all morning, and so I haven't been outside. I don't know what kind of day it is. The weather's supposed to be getting warmer. I guess that kind of robs us of a white Christmas, maybe. So, but anyway, hope your day's going good. I titled it today, "Ready for Christmas," and the reason is this happens to you too. When as we get closer, which we're pretty close now to Christmas now, getting really close to the actual Christmas day. Everywhere I go and everywhere you go, people kind of try to figure out what to say, and they all, well, are you ready for Christmas? And then you have to answer yes or no, or, I'm still working on it, or that. It's sort of a term that replaces how are you? Or maybe they say, how are you? Are you ready for Christmas? And so I don't know if you ask me that, I don't know. Yeah, it's changed so much for me now because when I used to travel all the time, like including the month of December, then I would preach in our church. We'd have multiple services even then, and then I would fly. Kathy and I would fly someplace, and then come back. And of course, we'd come back in time for Christmas. But we didn't have time for all those years. We didn't have time for really shopping because we're gone, And so I had other people mainly do the shopping for me. And so sometimes it would happen that would have my name on it, like, here's your present from Steve or from Steve and Kathy. And they'd open it and thank me. And I had no idea what was in there. I didn't know what they were going to open. And how did you know I wanted this? I just took a wild guess. So anyway, are you ready for Christmas? But anyway, now it's different. I was sharing either here or some other place, maybe at church, the ease of Amazon, and I'm starting to realize that it's so easy. Of course, we have our account and we're Prime members and all that, and so you don't even have to get your credit card. You just say what you want and push the right button. It already knows your address and everything, and it's okay. It's on the way. It'll be here tonight or tomorrow, and really fast. And I'm starting to realize that it's so easy. It could almost be addictive. I noticed a couple of times I was wishing that I needed something. I can't. Let's see. Do I need something? I don't. Can't think of anything. It's just so easy. Of course, I do that. I don't go shopping out that much, get out that much anyway. But we don't live too far from. We can get to Lowe's or Home Depot or different stores. But if I go to one hardware store and they've got everything, and I'm getting something stupid, small thing, like I need a 5-cent washer, and I have to go all the way to get it. And when I go in there, I try to think. I wish I needed something. I don't need any tools. I don't really. I got minor tools, but I don't need a bunch of tools. Or I try. Do we need light bulbs? When I can't think of anything, I go and buy a 5-cent washer and come back. That was about it. So anyway, I think we're sort of ready for Christmas. If you want to ask now, are you ready? Okay, because we're just mostly doing Amazon stuff, a little bit of other stuff. But anyway, so I guess you're ready. Now, the reason I brought that up was more just not to tell you about my Christmas or what I'm doing, but when you read the Christmas story, you read the story of the birth of Jesus, being more accurate, but we call it the Christmas story. When you read the Christmas story, you realize that was a big problem. If we put it in our day, there's a huge amount of people in Israel that weren't ready for Christmas, right? They weren't ready for Christmas. They weren't ready for Jesus. They weren't ready for what was taking place. And so when the angels then appear to the shepherds, which I'll talk more about them on Sunday, since it's our Christmas services. Sunday we'll be singing Christmas songs and have specials and read the Christmas story, and I'll talk a little bit about it, and things like that. And so when they had the angels report to them and sing to them and shout to them, I'm bringing you good news, a Savior is born. Well, they were ready to respond. They were ready, and they did respond. They said, let's go see him. And so they go see him. And then we have the other, we call them wise men, magi from the east and all that. We'll clear that up. And if your nativity scene, though, they're all there together. Shepherds and wise men are all together. The story's not quite like that, but for now we can go ahead, because here's these wise men that are magi. They're not Jewish anyway. I think, weren't they from Persia? Yeah. And so they come and they bring gifts. So if we put it together, like a little nativity scene, there's baby Jesus and a couple of lambs and Joseph and Mary and the wise men and the shepherds, and then we put them all together, right? It's a little group. But what we can say about this little group is they were ready for Christmas, right? Even though we wouldn't call it then. There was no Christmas at the time that we used that term. But anyway, the birth of Jesus. And so, but out of that then came a lot of confusion, because the reason it's important, kind of a hidden message that you've got to put together yourself, that really they were getting across to people, the writers were getting across to people, but they didn't say it. And that is, we had the shepherds who are way out. They're not in town, they're out, and they get a visitation and they respond. So we have Jewish shepherds, and then we have non-Jewish wise men. And so that's, the wise men would represent what? The pagan world, the non-Jewish world, and they sort of represent us who are now in the flock, hopefully, and part of the Jesus movement. But they come as Gentiles, and then we have the shepherds who come as Jewish people, and they come and they recognize him. But where was Herod? Where was the crowds? Where was other people? Because I guess we think it was all secretive and all that, but word gets out. Of course, we learn later that the Magi, wise guys, they let Herod know, and then that's when he decides to, kill the babies in that age of 2 to 3 years old, to get rid of this so-called Messiah that he didn't believe in, or if he did, he didn't want it competing with him. So we have all these characters, but the idea is the rich wise men who are not Jews came to him and worshiped him. And then the shepherds who were not in the palace left their flock, as we know, and they came and I'll be telling you more on that on Sunday. They came and worshiped him. So then they have both ends of the spectrum, Jews and non-Jews, but shepherds out in the field and wise men from Persia come all the way following the star. Where was everybody else? So if we put it in our day, then we could say, are you ready? We could say, were you, or you weren't ready for Christmas, Herod, were you? You weren't ready for the Messiah. You weren't ready for the birth of Jesus. So that's what I think was it. Are you ready for Christmas? And I'm thinking, I guess, pretty much, I guess. But really, that's the story of the small crowd that should have been huge that weren't ready. And of course, when Jesus starts his ministry, there's the general crowd weren't ready either. And so that's a lesson for us to think about a little bit, what Christmas is. We say, remember what it's about. The season is for Jesus. But anyway, so that's part of the greatness of the story, the hidden message is it's not who came, really, it's who did not come that determines the future of Israel, right? The future of Israel that eventually will lead to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. And that's not who came, it's because who did not come. Isn't that fun? That's fun, just sometimes realizing the story from a little bit different angle. Well, I was in the car yesterday. I had to go run. I had to drive a little ways just so I could sign my name. And that just took, okay, bye. But I drove it. And coming back, I decided, I turned on the radio, and I thought, well, I'll just capture some holiday music, they call it, some Christmas music, and see. Most of it is now, it's hard to hear O Little Town of Bethlehem on the radio now, but not impossible. So I thought I'll put it on scan. So I put it on scan, and it's scanning, and I'm looking for it. And it stops for just a few seconds, 5 seconds or whatever, 6. So you can decide if you want that, and then you push it and do it. Well, as it was scanning, it came across, and it wasn't a Christian channel, and it wasn't a Christmas Christian channel, and it wasn't a Christmas channel. Okay, it was just a regular old channel of some people talking, and I heard it, and all they said, "Would you want to spend 10 minutes with Jesus?" And so I pushed it to see what this is all about, and it was very, very interesting. These were minimal believers, but believers, and some of them had some of the language, phrasing, not the language, but the phrasing, told me these are not overly committed church folks, okay? Which is good, though, because they're talking about that. But here's what they did. Then I kept listening, and here's what they said. Would you rather spend 10 minutes with Jesus now, they mean now, talking to Jesus, being with Jesus, or be given $10 billion? They might have said trillion, but I don't know. It was million or $10 billion. Let's just say billion, whatever. And so they started this discussion of one person would say, I take the money, and another, some surprising, like I said, you could tell they weren't doing the church folks lingo, which is okay by me. I don't always like it anyway, and I was particularly glad. I would have known they were church folks is when they talked about God, they said thee and thou all of a sudden, and started with speaking Shakespeare, Elizabethan English. Well, then you got a real church folks then who talk normal to everybody else, but when they refer to God or they pray to God, it's these and thous. Okay, beside the point. But anyway, so it was surprising. Someone said, no, I'm going to choose Jesus. I heard him say that. I would choose Jesus. And I thought about that, about people who say, there's a lot of spiritual super saints. They hear Jesus every single day, talk to him, not appear. Because I think they meant like if Jesus would appear to you. So they don't not appear, but, Jesus is telling them all the time stuff. I think if you've been around as long as I have, you realize most of it's not him talking to him. And you say, well, how can you say that? Well, maybe it sounds a little judgmental, being critical. Who am I to say that that Jesus isn't talking to him? Okay, I get the point. You're right. But also, if Jesus was going to talk to you, what would he want to say? When he did talk, what did he say? He didn't say flowery stuff and just conversation. he got to the point, and he would talk repentance and serving and loving and go do this and go do that and do this and do that. It wasn't a lot of fluff about how great you are or how big of stuff you're going to do. In fact, when Jesus talked to Peter and talked about his future and what he was going to do, he told Peter how he was going to die. And Peter didn't like it very much because he wondered why he didn't tell John how he was going to die. And he told Peter, says, what's that to you? You go do the will of God. Isn't that probably what Jesus was talking to us about, right? And so we have a lot of these people, I don't want to be critical of them either, because who am I to be critical? But I just want to think about it a minute. Who say they died and went to heaven, or they had a vision and they all went, and they went to heaven. And I got to it on YouTube where I saw one. I listened to it, and then I realized if you keep pushing the right buttons, you'll get more people. Well, you'll get a whole one after the other will tell their story of dying and going to heaven, or they had a vision and went up to heaven or whatever. And almost all of them then describe they see Jesus, which is good. I'm glad, because maybe it'll affect other people. That part's good. But I thought it's really interesting the way they describe Jesus, and they tell how much love and how great it was, and there were flowers and beauty and lots of colors. They describe the things, but I can't. I'm sure somebody did, but I can't remember out of all of them that I listened to anybody coming back and say, "Let me tell you what he said." So that's what I would want to know. I don't want to know what he looked like, because that could be all kind of influences, and we know now he's a mighty warrior anyway. Nobody described him like that. But anyway, it's all the soft-spoken, pretty stuff, right? That's okay. I'm not really. But what I wanted to ask him, I said, well, I don't care what he looked like, or I don't care if, what it looked like to you. Tell me what he said. What did Jesus say? And that's what I want to know. What did he say? And so these people were bringing up something that a lot of people, they say they go to heaven, they know and come back with anything what they say. And by the way, do you think, like I said, I don't want to be critical, but I was kind of thinking, like, if that many people really, saw Jesus, went to heaven in some form, or they died and said they went and came back, or they had a vision, I don't know what, but wouldn't you just come back totally loyal, on fire, determined, single-minded, that I got to tell the world. I'm going to dedicate my life to telling the world about Jesus. And but some of them do it. It was just like sitting. One guy was sitting in a rocking chair on a old-fashioned log cabin type porch, and he's rocking. He's just rocking and saying, "Yeah," and it's wonderful, and it had flowers and that and this, and then I came back, and when I came back, I saw my body on the in the hospital ER, but then I came back in and woke up. Okay, that's great, but I don't know. That's good. Maybe they did. I'm not saying they did or they didn't, but for me, I would think it'd be a little more life-changing so that they could help change other lives. That's me. Maybe I'm being, like I said, maybe I'm just being too judgmental about things. But anyway, I just think about that. Oh yeah, and my other funny thing was if all these religious people died and went to heaven and came back, wouldn't they start speaking in tongues and really move? Not one of them said, I came back and I started speaking in tongues, because that's what happened to me when Jesus came into my life. I gave it totally to him and then I got filled with the Holy Spirit, and bang, I never heard any speaking tongues before. I never even heard of it. And I'm singing in the Spirit. I'm singing and speaking and singing on and on and on. And then I stopped and thought, what happened? So maybe it's my experience is ruining their experience. So we'll just put it that way. But anyway, these people, someone said, no, I'd talk to Jesus, and I'd let him talk to me. And then a few others said, well, I'd take the money. And so I start talking about judging. I came up with a plan, and if they ask my advice, they say, knowing religion like I do, I thought, what about this idea? Okay, what about this idea? They said, would you spend 10 minutes talking to Jesus, or would you take $1 billion in exchange for not talking to Jesus, and that was their discussion. I came up with this idea. How about this? Take the $1 billion, okay? Just take the money and run. No, I thought, no, that's not good. So no. Here's what you need to do. Knowing religion like I do. You take the 10 minutes talking with Jesus, right? Then, after he tells you all that stuff, get him to tell you stuff that not everybody knows. Ask him the right questions. Ask him secrets and mysteries and stuff that we all have questions about. What about this, and how's this going to happen? Spend the good 10 minutes getting the right information. Then you come back and you go on tour with it, and you go to coliseums, and you go to big churches, and you go to mega, and you go to downtown things, and you go on tour. And guess what? At the end of a couple of years, few years, you might not be a billionaire, but you're going to at least be a millionaire. Think of the offerings, right? So get the information, go on tour, take big offerings like they do, and you'll, at the end of a few years, you'll have all that kind of money, and everybody will know who you are because you spent 10 minutes with Jesus. What about a plan like that? You're not liking it, are you? No, you're not liking it. You know it's a little tongue-in-cheek, right? It's kind of revealing that people say they have visions, and maybe they do, but they go around, they write books and go on tour. Some great speakers can tell you all the stuff Jesus is telling them all the time, and it not only opens heaven's floodgates, it seems to open the cash gate too. So anyway, that would be a plan. You could think about it, right? if it ever happens to you, think, let's see, maybe I get all the secrets of the kingdom of God and all the mysteries, then I'll go on tour, and then all these kinds of people will come because they'll want to hear all the mysteries, and then I'll take up the offering, and in a few years, I'll know what Jesus said, and I have a lot of money too. Who knows? Maybe it would work. Of course, I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek because my actual talk today is about Are You Ready for Christmas, is to change it over to Are You Ready for Jesus? Are you really ready for Jesus? Would you be ready to talk to him anyway? Would you even know what you'd ask him? What would you ask him? What? And then after you ask him and after you talk to him for 10 minutes, if it were possible, what do you think? Who would you be? And our hope would be that you would see such magnificence in him that it would change your life forever. Change your life forever. And that's what we want people to really see and what we want them to really hear. Even though I'm kind of joking around today, funny Christmas and the things, 10 minutes with Jesus, I'm having a little fun with it. But the real crisis we have is people are not ready for Jesus, not the real Jesus. And they also have painted what I call a culturized Christianity. It's based on our culture, who our culture says Jesus is. And I think because our culture says Jesus that way, people, if they have a vision and they go to heaven or something, they see the culture Jesus, They describe him, how he looks and the way they felt. It was all feelings, what I heard. How they felt and how wonderful it was, that's good. But we need servants. So Christianity has turned into, do you know you're forgiven? There are lots of songs written about, I'm forgiven. Well, that's good. But forgiveness was offered before Jesus was born. See, if to be ready for Jesus is not to be ready for forgiveness. It's great. We need it, But a lot of evangelists today and speakers today, they push that. Are you ready? You can be forgiven. You need to be forgiven so you can go to heaven when you die. Well, forgiveness operated powerfully before Jesus was born. So in Israel, all those that didn't show up at the stable, as we call it, at the inn where there was no room, all the people that didn't show up could still be forgiven. They didn't show up, but they could still be forgiven because forgiveness in the kingdom then, through, the Jewish law, there were ways, you could be forgiven, but you couldn't be changed. So because they couldn't be transformed, many of them were not ready for Jesus, which is what he does. That's what he does. He transforms you. That's why 10 minutes with Jesus would be great. I mean, if he just appeared and talked to us, because I believe it would transform you. That's why God tells us over and over and over, even though Jesus appearing to us is going to be rare if it ever happens in your life. But the Bible over and over then talks about being new creation, transformation by the renewing of your mind, that we meet Jesus by the Spirit. And that's why the Bible over and over tells us to seek his face, seek the Lord while he may be found. Go find him, go connect with him. And so 10 minutes with you can still have 10 minutes with Jesus, and you really don't have to die and go to heaven and come back. Just by the Spirit of God, seek him, go after him, and learn from him. And then the whole idea is you find him, just like they found him in Bethlehem. You find him, and it's transforming you, and you become a different person, right? You become changed. So that's how we know that someone has really met Jesus. I think the shepherds were changed. The wise men had to be changed. And I've been changed. And I hope you've been changed. So forgiveness is great, but forgiveness doesn't transform you or change your heart. It only releases you from things you did. But it doesn't give you all the stuff that he did. Isn't that great? So I want to just, as we say, are you ready for Christmas? Then I'll just put that word in. Are you ready for the real Jesus? Saved and not just forgiven, but rescued and changed and transformed during this holiday time. Think about that. If you get some time off during the holiday season, take a little time to seek him and go find him. Be like the shepherds or the wise men and go really find him this holiday season. I hope that was a little bit of fun, a little tongue-in-cheek, but a little serious, too, to get you in the real holiday spirit, right? And that is the spirit of, not Christmas spirit, but the Spirit of the Lord. Till next time, bye-bye.